Alrighty guys, welcome to lesson 2 of the CAD class, and here I just want to spend some time talking about constraints, especially in sketches. And to start off, I'm just going to make a sketch on my top plane, right? Got my sketch, I'm looking directly face down at my top plane, and let's say I want to make a circle. So I'm just gonna click my circle tool. I can use the keybind of C, and let's say I just want to make my circle. I have a nice circle right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make another circle, and as you can see, these circles are completely blue. And what that means is that they're completely unconstrained. I can still, if I want to drag this, I can change the size of the circles. If I want to drag it from the center, I can move it around. There's nothing constraining these circles in place. So one way to fix that, the easiest and simplest and also most used constraint that you're going to use is the dimension tool. And there are two ways to access it. One of them is to go up here and search dimension. It's right here, so I can click the dimension tool, click my circle, and then I'll get my dimension. So I want to make it 1.5 inches, or the much easier way that I prefer is to just hit D. My cursor, you see it turns into the X, dimension it 1.5. So as you can see, the circle, it's still blue, which means it's still unconstrained in some way. However, it is constrained to one set size. I can't drag the circle and make it bigger and smaller. And if I were to say move these circles next to each other, like they're not really, there's no rhyme or reason to it. They're just sort of there. Oops. So one thing that I can do to constrain these circles to each other is make them a set distance from each other. Let's say I want to make them 2 inches apart, right? But I can also use my neat constraints that are up here in this part of the bar. And the one I'm going to use right now is the horizontal constraint. So if I click these 2 points, and then I click the horizontal constraint, look at that. Now the 2 points of the circle, the 2 centers of the circles are on the same horizontal plane. The same thing works with the vertical constraint. If I make another circle, if I click these 2 center points and hit the vertical constraint, they end up on the same vertical plane. It can still move up and down horizontally, but it is constrained vertically. And another constraint that's very useful is the equal constraint. That is this one right here, the 2 lines. You can also click E. If I hit this circle and then click the equal constraint, you can see that now the circles are equal to each other. I can't make this one bigger or smaller. If I change this dimension to, say, 0.5 inches, both circles will change to 0.5 inches. Now, let's say I want to make these 2 circles 2 inches from each other. Now you can see the whole thing is constrained relative to itself. I can't drag these circles away from each other. It's nice. However, I can still drag it around in space. And once you start working with a little bit more complex assemblies, more complex part studios and building more complex things, this is going to become a hassle. So one way to fix this and make this fully constrained is to constrain this to a fixed point. Now, Onshape gives you a fixed point already. It gives you this, the origin. You can tell that it's fixed because it's all black. So if I just drag this circle over to the origin, first of all, you see this dashed line comes up when I come near. If I just hold it like this, that will automatically horizontally constrain the circle to the origin. Now, the same thing happens if I just undo that. The same thing happens if I were to go vertical. See that dashed line starts to appear? I just drag it, and now it is vertically constrained. Undo that. If I were to drag the circle such that you get this square appearing, if I hover the point over itself, or over the origin, now the point of the origin is locked to the point of the circle. That's known as a coincident constraint. And as you can see, the whole sketch will turn black, which means it's fully constrained. There's nothing I can do to move it, no matter what. If I try to force it to move, let's say I want to make this 3 inches, I want to make this further, it'll actually turn red. It'll break the sketch. There's nothing I can do to move any of these pieces because they're fully constrained, and that's what you want. You want it so that you can't accidentally drag something and slip up and not realize it, and it'll mess up all your dimensioning. You want everything to be fully constrained. Now, I'm just going to go back a few spaces, Control Z. And now I'm actually going to do a line to connect these two circles to each other. So as you can see, the line if I have a line and I sort of start it here, the circle will highlight yellow as I bring the point closer to it. And if I click while it's yellow, the point will automatically become coincident to that circle. And again, the coincident constraint just means that one point is locked to another point or a line. So one way that I can do that a different way is if I click this point and then click the circle and then hit the coincident constraint up here, it will automatically become coincident. And now these two are locked together. I can't separate them. Another constraint that I can use is the tangent constraint. And this works between lines and circles. So if I hit this point, I hit this circle, it shouldn't do anything. Yeah, see, a tangent constraint requires 2 curves, one of which must not be aligned. So one of my curves, which is this circle, and then the other, which technically isn't a curve, but I've got my line here. If I click the line in the circle and then hit tangent, the line is now tangent to the circle. If I do the same thing with this line and this circle, now I've got my line tangent to the 2 circles. Now, let's say I want to do something a little bit funky here. I'll go from here to here. See these 2 pieces? If I hover over the point, you can see the coincident constraint pops up. I can see that these are constrained. Let's say I want to do something like this. I'll make this tangent. So, click my tangent constraint. And all of these have keybinds, by the way. If you hover over it, you can see tangent is T, equal is E. That one makes sense. The parallel constraint, it's B for some reason. I don't know why. So let's say I just make 2 lines like this. Oh, they're not parallel. Click the line, click parallel. Now they're parallel to each other. It's a nice one. But let's say I want this to also be tangent. So I click these 2. Now this line is tangent across that. And then I've got my line coming across here. And see how my line it's probably hard to see, but it sort of locks if I bring it vertically. That automatically gives it the vertical constraint. So make this tangent and then this tangent. So now I've got my shape. If I go over and bring it to the origin and lock it with the coincident, which is I, now you can see everything is fully constrained. That's quite nice. Now, the next thing I'm going to do real quick is extrude this so I can show you some other tools that you can use. So select all my faces. I finish the sketch. I either use extrude, or I personally prefer just doing the keybind Shift E. Let's go with 0.5 inch extrude. It's about right. And then completely extrude. And now I've got my shape. Now, in robotics, if I see this, I do not like this. This, in the real world, would be impossible to manufacture if I'm trying to make a part. So what I can do is actually use the fillet tool, which is this part right here. And if I click that, it'll give me the menu, it'll give me the radius. Let's say I want to do a 0.125 inch fillet. That's an 1/8 inch. That looks about right. And let's say I want to fillet this edge right here. So what I would do, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. It's going to let me get in there. Actually, it might not. Yeah, it's not going to let me. Alright. You know what? I can actually fillet inside the sketch. If I hit sketch fillet, which is this one, if I select these 2 lines, it's not going to let me do it until I cut this. This is another sketching tool. Trim, which is M. So if I click this, it'll trim that line off at the points. And while I'm at it, I might as well trim this too. Here you can see bop and then bop. That's the trim tool. And then I go into my sketch fillet. And sketch fillets and three-dimensional fillets, they're the same principle, where you're taking a hard angle. So let's say I have a 90-degree angle like this, and I'm making a fillet. I'm pretty much filling the area to make it smooth. So if I click these two lines with the fillet tool, it will let me sort of round out that hard corner. And that's quite useful because you don't want a lot of sharp edges, because first of all, they build up a lot of stress. So it's pretty nice for a load saving measure to just fillet stuff, just so it's stronger. And also, you don't want sharp edges. So if I had, let's say, something like this big sharp thing sticking out, I can fillet it by selecting these two, and now it's a nice rounded edge. So I'm just going to delete all that. I'm going to sketch fillet this. So I want to make it an 1/8 inch, so 0.125. And now you see I have my nice fillet in there. Now, if I check it off, the extrude, it automatically remembers that I selected all of those areas to extrude, so the fillet is just going to become part of the extrude. I'm just going to hide the top plane because I like it. And now you see I have my nice rounded edged shape. Now, another thing that you can do with the fillet tool is if I select this top edge like this, it'll actually fillet the entire top edge. And that is because I have the fillet set to this tangent propagation right here. So right now it's giving me a 0.125 inch fillet all the way around the shape. If I turn off tangent propagation, it will actually only fillet this edge. And it doesn't really want to because I selected a weird part. But if I select this straight edge, you can see it doesn't go all the way around. It only fillets the edge that I selected. So you can use this, this little check mark to pretty much decide what part you want to fillet. In this case, I want to do the whole thing, so I'll select the top and the bottom, and now it's even nicer of like a rounded, smooth curve, which is pretty nice. Now, that is pretty much the basics of your constraints and your sketching tools. Using that, I can make pretty much any shape that I want to make inside a sketch, or then modeling the part that I extruded. And everything that you're going to do pretty much is just you make a sketch, you extrude it, and then you add some features to the extrude. Now, let's go back into a sketch. So I'm going to make a new sketch on my top plane. Click the sketch, click the top plane, and I'm just going to hide this part. If I go down here into my parts tree, I can just click the I symbol and hide it. And now I'm actually going to make a line like this. This is going to be my center line. And see how I just made that dashed? That's the hidden line feature, or the construction line feature. So I can do that by clicking Q. Right now I'm just hitting Q on my keyboard and it turns it on and off. Or I can hit the construction line. And this is nice if you want a line that won't actually extrude, but if you want to like use it as a reference point. So I'm going to make this 5 inches, and then I'm going to just make a part something like this. Da, 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 da. Now this is a pretty weird shape, don't you think? Now what I can do with it, remember I have to make sure that my shape is closed before I extrude it. This construction line doesn't actually count as a real line. So this shape is open and it won't let me extrude. So I actually have to go in with a new line and make sure it gives me that gray area. I can select it, it's closed. Now, a really cool tool that is useful for objects that you want to manufacture on a lathe or like a spinning tool, that you can use the rotate. And the way I do that is I finish my sketch, I click check mark, and then I use the revolve tool. Not rotate, my bad, it's revolve. And what that will do is actually extrude this circularly around an axis that I choose. So if I click the revolve, I click this face, and then see this is red, this revolve axis, I click that, and then I select the construction line as my revolve axis, and now, as you can see, the whole thing revolves around that point. It will extrude itself in a circular manner. And now I have a bunch of different options. I can do a full revolve, which just does the whole thing 360 degrees. I can do one direction, which now I can decide how far I want to revolve it. And here this is also good so you can see how it's extruding around this circular plane. See, I can set it to, like, let's say 180 degrees, and now it will make the shape halfway. It's a nice cross section. I can do symmetric, which will extrude it in two separate directions separately, but for now I'm just going to go with the full. Finish that. Oops, I pressed the X button. That's something you don't want to do. If you accidentally click X, that's very annoying, because then you have to go back in and redo your operation. So try not to misclick X. That's just one of the quirks of Onshape. So I do my revolve like that, and I check mark it to finish the operation. Now what I can do is I will fillet this edge, because this is a sharp edge. Someone might stick themselves on it if it's a sharp piece of metal. So I'm going to hit the fillet tool, which is this guy, and select this edge, and I'll give it an 8-inch fillet, and now I have this nice rounded edge to my part.